Hello and welcome to another Bristlecone broadcast. I'm Michael Lean, and joined with me today is a special guest, Mike Landry. Hey, Mike.
Hi, Michael.
So Mike is an entrepreneur at heart. He is the CEO of KetteQ. Before that, he was over at Genpact, where he grew the supply chain service line business to 300 million. And today, Mike is going to talk to me about autonomous planning. What is it? Why is it important? Why are people talking about it? And how to get there. So Mike, to get started, what is autonomous planning? Maybe we should define terms so everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, that's great. And so if you think about autonomous driving, that's probably the best analogy we can come up with. And there's the car does more and more things for the driver. You still have to keep your hands on the wheel. Maybe not one day down the road, no pun intended, but for supply chain planning, where there's a challenge in finding people to implement, maintain, and use the complex systems of today, autonomous planning will allow the system using today's technology to do more of the planning for the user.
Wonderful. So let's talk about why it's important now. Why is it just coming into the conversation at this particular time in 2024?
Yeah, and since COVID, we've seen several things unfold in the market. One, supply chains, the performance is more and more critical to the performance of the company, and everyone understands that it's a dinner time conversation. Yeah. Second, disruptions have more of an impact now than ever, and it's a ripple effect from one supply chain to another. The chip shortage impacted automotive and high tech. The Suez and geographical impact too. The Suez Canal impacted things, impacted things around the world. And then, like I mentioned, the talent shortage and how the demographics are changing to making it harder to find the right skills to implement, maintain, and use the complex system. So all of those things happening at the same time is creating a real challenge for supply chain executives today.
Got it. So in the position you're at, you're privileged to talk to a lot of different people at companies who do supply chain planning. What are you seeing? Like, where are they now? And how far is the gap to autonomous planning?
Yeah, so that's, if you look at autonomous planning looking forward for the next 20 years, we kind of have to look backwards maybe for the last 40 years and see when supply chain planning started. It was an evolution of technology, and I too coined the term, and they started with the first supply chain planning engine and systems, and then fast followers like the ERP vendors of SAP and Oracle came in, and then out of that came a supply chain plan. Unfortunately, it took hours to run. And so while it did a good job, it didn't do everything what businesses needed back in the 80s and 90s. So along came another set of vendors, and they broke the paradigm, and they did things in a way that took advantage of the new technology that was available at the time, namely in-memory databases. And so they did a lot of things proprietary on top of that technology in order to change the paradigm from running supply solves in hours to minutes. And that created just an opportunity for companies to run scenarios and to test ideas. Unfortunately, it was still manual and based on the intuition of the user, and also the architect's decisions maybe years earlier when the system was implemented. So it still had limited results, better than the hours it took to run a plan, but still not what was needed for an autonomous planning system where the system can do more of that lifting and thinking for the business and for the planners.
Okay, it seems like every time there's a big shift in technology, the way forward is actually to see which players are embracing that technology and kind of starting from a fresh architecture. I remember we were talking about that earlier. Mm-hmm. So what's new about now? Like, why, you have a choice when looking at supply chain planning, mm-hmm. older systems that are tried and true and have a track record, and then brand new players. So what's the advantage of the brand new players?
Yeah. Good news is in terms of KetteQ, we started at a time when all of the challenges were growing up in the face of businesses and industries today. But at the same time, technology around AI, machine learning, and underpinnings from cloud computing were all becoming more and more available. So we were able to start with a blank piece of paper with 30 or 40 years experience implementing and building tools, but saying, hey, there's got to be a better way to enable an autonomous planning vision and path. And so we started out to say, how can we harness the cloud computing, the horizontal scalability? And essentially, that's what's giving way to machine learning and AI today. It needs that computing power of the cloud. So by taking those opportunities, we were able to then say, how would we run a scenario with horizontal scalability? Essentially break down the supply chain into pieces so that you can have multiple CPUs attack the same scenario and in parallel and then bring that together. So with that technology, now we break the last paradigm and to usher in the next supply chain planning era by taking supply solves down from not hours, not minutes, but seconds or even fractions of a second. And with a genetic algorithm on top of that, now we can do autonomous planning because the system can essentially try everything for the user and really even for the architect to say, what should the parameters and decisions be? So instead of running one scenario at a time, we're running thousands or even tens of thousands in order to test all the world of possibilities of parameters and decisions. And then those best ones kind of emerge and come to the top to give the right combination of KPIs, inventory levels, transportation costs, on-time fill, and then take it one step further on this path of autonomous planning that you see on the slide now. That gets you to optimal. So we cross the hurdle in technology, architecture, and foundation by not having the history to slow us down. Only to history is to teach us, but the latest technology to cross that hurdle and move into optimal, finding the optimal one, and then testing the winning scenarios to see how rugged are they. Anti-fragile is a term that we're starting to hear more about too. And so how well will they handle uncertainties, uncertainty around demand and lead time and availability to add probabilities and a confidence score. So to move from one deterministic plan at a time to optimal to probabilistic decision-making is a really big head start on the path to autonomous planning.
So Mike, how many years away are we from a fully autonomous supply chain planning capability?
Yeah, I think it's right around the corner. All the tools are there. So at KetteQ, with the right foundation, the right architecture, we're bringing those tools to bear and bringing those to the marketplace. The first two steps that we've seen and we talked about in optimal planning and then probabilistic planning are there and available. Adding the machine learning and the AI gets you to full autonomous planning. Then it's a question of when are companies ready to take advantage of that? How fast can they get their organization and their processes? Because it's not just an answer for the planners. It really opens the door to everyone that's involved in the company and interacting with the supply chain. They don't have to go through a center of excellence and wait a couple of days for a report or provide input and wait for insights and direction. That's a very disconnected world that we live in today when you look at sales and customers and procurement and everyone that really touches the supply chain. What generative AI, and you can see it on the slide here, there's really kind of several phases that we see unfolding that lead us all the way to full autonomous planning. And it doesn't mean that it's a lights out. It actually involves more people than less. Less maybe at the planner, because the planning role starts to change from being the center of excellence to serving up an autonomous planning for a distribution of excellence, if you think about it that way. So the planners are there to monitor, to train, to supervise, and to intervene. So it's not like they don't have a role. They certainly do. But everyone else has a role now, too. And so you can see in that first phase, inform. So instead of going to that center of excellence to get information right away, without having to learn the system, know what screen to go to, know what parameters to pick, you can, in natural language processing, interact with the system and say, hey, can you list the suppliers with the highest delivery variability for the components on finished goods with margin greater than 40%? That's just natural language, and I can type that in and get the answers coming back. And so at KetteQ, we're able to take advantage of that very quickly because we're not proprietary or closed system. It's open, it's a relational database. So we're able to train the current tools that are available in generative AI today very quickly in our data model and turn that sentence into a SQL and then pull that back and then decide how you want to see that, whether it's a table or a graph. That's easy interaction with generative AI as well. And the same is true with the next one. Essentially turns out a database interaction, knowing the data model and being able to translate, something like the next one called assist, which would be depromote the actual demand for a certain product in a certain region for a certain month by 10%. In today's systems, you have to know what screen to go to, know what parameters to pick, and then change that 10%. But not in the world of generative AI. Anyone that's involved in supply chain that has authority to be able to make these decisions can implement it, that easily. So I'll pause there, though. But those are the first steps that are available now, and the next aren't that far away.
Well, that's good. And I guess the the best thing about that is nobody's losing their job. This is just going to
Yeah.
make them more effective. And I think we've seen that through every real revolution in technology. People who embrace it, they just become better, more effective, and it's better for the company as well. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, great. So, Mike, last question. What do you see in companies that are really on top of this? Like, what are the traits that the companies that are embracing autonomous planning are showing you? So that companies maybe that are tuning in can see if maybe they have those traits, and if not, maybe they can get that into their culture ASAP.
Yeah, it's really, I think it starts with being forward thinking. So not being satisfied with just doing one step better, but looking down the road and saying, where do we want to be as a company? And how do we get there from a technology and process and organization, and then setting a course to that. Now that might be still a one step, but it's a one step in that direction with that vision. And so, the other two areas or phases that we see on the same slide here, advise and automate, while they're not available today, that's where we're going with autonomous planning, is having a system being able to interact with you to provide advice when you're trying to solve a problem, or looking for the problems before you even know it's there, so that the solutions can be served up. That's not something that any company is ready to do tomorrow, but the forward-thinking companies are preparing a path to be able to do that one day, knowing that the world's changing, and it's changing very quickly, a lot faster now than perhaps ever. And so it's going to be exciting to see companies getting on this path and creating these kinds of use cases by enabling sales and knowing and bringing marketing closer to supply chain and all the things that people are wanting to do. The technology is becoming available to do it. So those that are ready and start to take steps on this path will have a big advantage of those that are just kind of thinking about their business the same old way.
Wonderful. So everyone, thank you for tuning in. If you are a forward-thinking company and want to learn more about KetteQ or just what Bristlecone can do to help you in your supply chain, please reach out to me, Michael Lean, or Mike Landry. We'll put all of our contact information at the end title here. But want to thank you again for tuning in. Have a great day.